Lose yourself in a good book. The Bord Gáis Energy Book Club.
Now, former chairman of the BBC, BT and the Royal Shakespeare Company, Sir Christopher Bland, decided to embark on a whole new career at the ripe old age of 73 when he took up creative writing.
Now aged 76, Christopher has just published his debut novel Ashes in the Wind, described as an epic story of two Irish tribes, the Anglo-Irish Burkes and the Catholic Irish Sullivans, from 1919 to 2010. And he joins us now to tell us all about it. You are very welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Quite literally a sir. It's the first time I've said that.
A literal
it's the first time we had a sir. No, it can't be the first time we've had a sir.
We've had an ambassador, a British ambassador.
There you
on,
go.
so
they're all sirs.
They're all sirs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you starting writing at 73, because this gives everybody hope. This is a wonderful story. You have had an amazing and very accomplished career, and we'll get to some of that and on. But at 73, you decided I might try my hand at writing.
I did. I talked a few novels in my time, you know, and it occurred to me that talking is one thing, time to sit down and write the book.
It's also one thing to take a creative writing class, very different thing to actually pen a book and get it published.
It is. But the creative writing class really kicked me off. You know, you had to produce stuff every week, critiqued by the teacher and by your fellow writers, and that gave me a great start.
And had this book always been in you? Everyone says everyone has a kind of a germ of an idea hanging around for a long time. Was that the same with you?
No.
No?
Now, this came to me late and triggered by my Anglo-Irish background and an interest. It started with I have a sepia photograph of my great-grandfather and grandfather in front of Derry Queen Castle on the Kenmare River. And I thought, taken in about the turn of the last century, about 1900, and I thought, you know, there they are, not knowing what's going to hit them. Their world is completely going to change. And behind them, in a thinly disguised Drimnamore village of Sneem, they're the Sullivans, whose world is also going to change with the War of Independence and the Civil War. And it's about how those two tribes interact over 100 years.
Yeah, it's quite, the scope is quite grand. 100 years, a couple of generations.
Yeah, it is a big book.
It is a big book.
It is interesting, Christopher, that when you decide to write it, that actually what you do is that you know, atavism rears its head, and you literally go back to your ancestors. And I mean, you were raised in Bangor in the north, right? But your family, the Blands, were in Kerry for what, a couple of hundred years?
A couple of hundred years, yes.
So it is extraordinary that you went back to that. Now, did that bubble up, or did you think, oh no, that's rich territory for mining?
It's rich territory, and it's the territory of my heart, Kerry. You know, I never lived there, and I live in Hampshire now. Hampshire means nothing to me. Kerry, I go back there and I feel different about it. It's strange, but true.
It is strange. Kerry has that ability to affect people in that way.
So sort of English heart, Irish blood.
Yeah, that's it. I'm Anglo-Irish, you know, neither one thing nor t'other.
But no, hang on a second. You did represent Ireland in the Olympics in Rome,
didn't
you?
Absolutely. I had the green, white and gold on my pocket.
For fencing?
My grandfather was uneasy about that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What did he say?
Well, he thought it was good to be in the Olympics, but, you know, a Fenian flag on your pocket. I said, listen, Grandad, it's changed. And I was happy to go. Ireland is all Ireland when it comes to rugby and fencing. And there I was in my early 20s in Rome with the Irish fencing team.
How
Terrific.
fantastic.
And if Ireland were playing England in the morning, you'd be shouting for Ireland?
Certainly.
But if England were playing anybody else, you'd be shouting for them? Well, that's fair.
That's right.
That's grand.
But I shout for Kerry next Sunday.
Well said, well said.
And my Sullivan hero leads Kerry to the All Ireland in the book. So.
Okay.
Did you have any qualms, you know, about Anglo-Irish, given your career and your life and all that? Did you have any qualms? Did you think, oh, I wonder how a book like this, written by somebody like me, might be greeted? Or did you worry about that at all?
I didn't worry about it at all. It's an interesting book. It'll get the audience it deserves, and I hope it's a good one.
Well, you know that there's a fascination with that whole period of our history now, because we're coming up to 16, which, you know, was, well, you know the history of it, and eventually we become, you know, we become a nation. But that's the spark that lights it, and of course, it was a very turbulent period for 5, 6, 7 years, nearly 10 years afterwards. A lot of death, a lot of blood, and there's now a lot of revision about that period. Do you formulate any conclusions in the book?
Only that it takes a long time for... I mean, the tragedy of Ireland wasn't the War of Independence. It was the Civil War that followed. And that fault line has run through Irish politics, north and south of the border. But it's lasted 100 years. It's still there.
It is still there.
It is amazing the way things resonate, is because we're now looking at Scotland and whether they will or whether they won't. And I don't know whether you feel in a position to voice an opinion one way or the other on it.
It's for the Scots to decide. If I was a Scot, if I voted with my heart, I'd say yes. If I voted with my head, I'd say no.
It is very much
see.
a head versus heart, isn't it? Yeah. I think they're going to go with their hearts. They've big hearts, those Scots.
Big
Well, it'd be
heart.
kind of hard for anybody.
Braveheart heart.
Well, there you go.
Hard for anybody in this country to deny them their independence or their wish for it. But on a kind of pragmatic level, we kind of hope they don't, because it gives us another competitor in Europe for foreign direct investment.
Well, that's right.
Christopher, do you mind if I ask you about your time at the BBC? Have you looked at what the BBC has gone through recently? And it's been tough. It's been a tough time for them at the BBC, and the scandals about Savile and so on and so forth. I mean, while you were there, were you aware of it? Were you completely oblivious to it?
No, not aware.
Not a jot of it?
No.
Yeah. And so now, do you look at what's happened and do you feel any sense of shame or regret, or what are your feelings about it?
Plainly, you feel shame and regret at the culture that allowed somebody like Savile and others to get away, not only at the BBC, but within the National Health Service. Savile could do what he liked because he was famous. And the culture that allowed a man like that to do what he liked was shocking.
The one thing you can say about British society is that when something like that is uncovered, they really clean house in a way that a lot of other countries, particularly this country,
we tend to
does
sweep things
not
under the rug.
do.
Yeah.
No, they you know, it's almost self-flagellating now at this stage. They're going to the ends to kind of get to the bottom of it, which they should, and it's to be lauded. But you know,
I don't think you're hard on this country, because if
Christopher,
it's taken a while, but still, we're getting to the bottom of the laundry nuns. And
we are getting there, you're right.
Abuse by priests. It's taken a while, but it's hard to face up to that kind of horrible reality and say, you know, what does it say about us as a society or as an organisation?
Well, of course, as your book you know, points out, we are a very young society in a very young country, so maybe we need to be a bit more mature before we can actually get to the stage where we can really look in the mirror and say, there are all the warts and we need to do something about them. But anyway.
Maybe we need to look to our history to look to our future, and that's what Ashes in the Wind does so well. Christopher, pleasure to meet you this morning. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
This month's Book Club choice is Fallen by Leah Mills. If you would like to enter, simply send us your review by Friday, the 26th of September. You can email them to irelandam@tv3.ie. You can also post your entry to Bord Gáis Energy Book Club, TV3, Westgate Business Park, Ballymount, Dublin 24.
Lose yourself in a good book. The Bord Gáis Energy Book Club.